confusion reigns over what Nigel Farage means when he says mass deportations of illegal immigrants, because his definition seems to have changed and gone from being impossible quite recently to now being possible. This is the infamous clip where he rules out mass deportations just a few months ago.
The mass deportations in America really happened under Eisenhower. For us, at the moment, it's a political impossibility.
But is it your ambition?
No.
He then went on recently to talk to the Times about his party's mass deportation proposals, reported here by the BBC, which is not behind a paywall. Farage vows mass deportations to tackle small boats. Reform UK is pledging mass deportations of asylum seekers who arrive in the UK in small boats. Under the proposed illegal migration mass deportation bill, Farage's party would consider sending migrants to British overseas territories like Ascension Island as a fallback option. And finally, from the horse's mouth, the aim of this legislation is mass deportations, he, Farage, told the Times. So we have a contradiction. In his press conference the other day, neither he nor Zia Youssef mentioned mass deportations at any point in their presentation. He was challenged by a GB News journalist about those comments that he made on GB News in that GB News video, but without actual mention of mass deportations, which Farage talked about.
Nigel Farage, last September you told GB News that it was a political impossibility to deport hundreds of thousands of people and that you simply couldn't do it. What has changed your mind that you now believe that you can?
That's not what he said. Hundreds of thousands were impossible. He said mass deportations were impossible. Anyway, the answer was this.
The political impossibility was deporting millions and millions of people, and that's where the argument had gone. We had a problem that one of our MPs, who's no longer an MP, was talking about deporting entire communities, including people who've been born here. And frankly, we found that unacceptable. And so I just did not want, I think you can quote me for another interview, to get dragged down the route of mass deportations at that stage. We have sorted out that political internal difficulty that we had, and since that time, the work has been done on a credible plan so that we can deport hundreds of thousands of people over the 5 years of a reform government.
The problem was not mass deportations per se, but simply the sheer numbers, and he went on to blame Rupert Lowe, who, when he was a Reform MP, he called on the deportation of anybody connected to illegal activity like the rape gangs, called for them to be deported, so potentially very large numbers of people indeed. But he says getting rid of Lowe solved that extreme numbers problem and allowed them to set a more realistic lower target.
But do we realistically think, Zia, we can deport 500,000-600,000 people in the lifetime of the first Parliament?
So look, one of the key points to make here is if you look at the population who are illegally, you're talking north of 650,000 adults without children who are in this country illegally. Let's start with deporting them. Let's get that done promptly and efficiently.
So 600,000 or so men without children who represent the biggest concern. And note that he did say, let's start there.
Let's start with deporting them. Let's get that done promptly and efficiently.
That suggests they might not end there, and that was a throwaway line, and it did have the kind of ring of authenticity to it. 600,000 over 5 years doesn't sound like an awful lot, but it's around 300 per day or so, working every day of the year, or 500 per day if you take off weekends and a few bank holidays, which is quite a lot, and it's close to the numbers actually which are arriving illegally now, which will obviously carry on until 2029 because Starmer is importing voters as he sees it, at which point Farage will then start unwinding those numbers, leaving us back where we are now in 2025 in 2034. Can you realistically get rid of more than that? And if you can, what would the mechanism be? One idea would be to simply repurpose boats, a handful of ferries, and then equip them with lifeboats and life jackets and all the necessary paraphernalia, load them up onto those, and then take them back to the French side and offload them onto the French to then have the French pick them up and take them back where they started out. That might be considered something of an act of aggression too far for the British, but he did actually mention something like that in his manifesto. Stop the boats with our 4-point plan, yada yada yada. Pick up illegal migrants out of boats and take them back to France. So if you can pick them up from dinghies as they try to get here and then take them back, why not take them back directly from the shore to France in the exact same way? Seems like a possibility. Then there is this problem. This was one day after his press conference.
I was very, very clear yesterday in what I said, that the deportation of illegal immigrants, we were not even discussing women and children at this stage. There were so many illegal males in Britain, and the news reports that said that after my conference yesterday were wrong.
So no women and children. In reality, let's face it, there are no women and children on these boats, so that's not an issue on the face of it. But of course, young illegals, and most of them are young, can pose as children, either possibly as children of mothers paid by the traffickers to accompany them on the crossing, or without fake mothers, just by themselves. They can pose as children. We know that happens in the first half of 2024. Just recently, there were 1,300 caught pretending to be children, including convicted murderers. And that's without any of the kind of necessity that there would be under these proposals. So you can be sure they're beavering away now, working out how they can use this amnesty to their advantage in anticipation of a potential reform government. So there are at least two problems here. The numbers overall are pretty conservative, even if they don't look unreasonable when you work them out on a daily basis. But even then, even if you accept that 600,000 or so over 5 years is realistically as good as it's going to get, he has still offered them the off-ramp of the amnesty for women and children, which is eminently abusable. So he's going to have to do a lot better than this. What I suggest he does is he puts the problem of his monumental ego aside. He allows the likes of Rupert Lowe back into reform. Rupert Lowe, who he totally illegitimately got rid of with those bogus legal charges, and he gets serious about this. And if he doesn't, he's going to have the potentially catastrophic problem of the split vote with the likes of Rupert Lowe, who has substantial influence online, particularly going to places like Advance UK and Restore UK or whatever else, and over the course of the next 4 years building up a real head of steam and potentially causing quite a big split vote come 2029. If he doesn't get serious about that, something like that is going to happen.